Welcome to the Aussie Warrior podcast, and I'm delighted Sam Birmingham, an old friend of mine, has come out on a lazy Perth afternoon and agreed to have a chat. Sam, we haven't caught up for a while, but welcome.
Good to see you, Nick.
Yeah. You are a man of many talents, and you wear a number of different hats, and you've done a lot in your working life and family life and community life. And I know you through football, community football, I guess we could describe it as.
Yep.
I was sort of roped into a committee for a junior football club, mighty West Coast Junior Football Club, and we were very lucky that there were some really good people, not the least of all yourself, running the West Coast Cowan Club at the time, now the West Coast Amateur Footy Club.
Yep.
And we had some great people doing some good things for community footy, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
What was your journey down to City Beach Oval and West Coast Amateurs?
The footy one's an interesting journey because I never played it, always liked it as a spectator. Never played it at all, like not even Auskick or anything. All my junior sport was cricket, community cricket, district levels, squads, etc., and hockey in the winter. And it was both, especially cricket was, like 10 days a week, hockey was 5 days a week. At the end of school, I had a knee reconstruction, I think first year uni. So been a wicketkeeper for cricket all these years, knee was stuffed, had a knee recon and had time off sport. And I promised this would get back to footy. But essentially, that means then what I used to do every week, every afternoon, had clean air. And a year went by and I wasn't going to play cricket again because the knee was stuffed. And some mates tapped me on the shoulder and just said, "Oh, why don't you come down to the footy club?" And they probably got me at the right time, in the sense that enough time had passed and I realised there was a void.
Yeah.
They probably were just desperate for players.
Yeah.
We were never a deep club, and I came down and learned a little bit about how to play footy, but mainly off field, I guess. I think it's probably in the DNA. Parents both being from the regions, country towns. I think there's probably, I didn't know it, but a bit of volunteering, just mindset in there. And you see something that needs to get done, you just do it mindset. I played all of, I reckon, less than 20 games over, I think, about 10 years at the club.
Yeah.
For various reasons, ability, injury, etc. But would always do other roles. And it turns out, I already had a lot of mates down there who were the ones who sort of pulled me down. And then met a bunch more friends, some of whom go on to become your best mates and, best men at your weddings and introduce you to your wife and all that sort of stuff. So, it was one of those probably sliding doors kind of scenario.
Mm-hmm. Funny you say that because I played rugby at school and rowed.
Yeah.
And after school I kept rowing. I thought rugby was just too tough a sport for me to go and play at an amateur level, but I really enjoyed rowing. And probably like a similar story to yours, I just found at an early age I got roped into the odd committee, and I sort of had that feeling, well, if you're going to be down around the shed or around the sport, well, you kind of want to be involved because you want good things to happen.
Yeah.
And perhaps maybe even naively some ideas about how things should run.
Yep.
So I ended up on some rowing club committees, and then later in life, lo and behold, the kids start playing footy. My eldest boy was a young Oz kicker down at West Coast, and next thing you know, you're sort of running the Auskick and then president of the junior footy club, and you feel like a bit of an imposter in some ways because you think there's people with far more credentials and background in the sport. But I think, like a lot of things in life, if you're willing to roll your sleeves up and sometimes coming to things somewhat ignorantly and being willing to say, well, I'm not a high-level footballer by any stretch of the imagination, it kind of doesn't do any harm.
Yeah, I actually reckon it can be an advantage in some senses. Like particularly use community sport or sport generally as an example. Sport by definition is winners and losers.
Yeah.
And if you've played that sport, you kind of, or you've grown up doing is wanting to win.
Yeah.
And then when you go, and yes, you can still love the sport as a spectator or whatever, or like sport generally, but you don't have a dog in that fight per se.
Yeah.
So you can maybe see a little bit bigger, and that was definitely, I think, my strength was never the on-field, but the off-field, I was able to realise where we weren't great at all, or good even, and spend my time on what I was good at, and learn a bunch along the way. And yeah, I mean, you don't go into those roles wanting to get X, Y, or Z out of it, but I sort of looked back and realised, and even if I'm doing like interviews for, you know, a new job or something, all of the stories I would tell about, you know, tell me a scenario about when you've done A, B, or C. Actually, all the good ones are from the community sport. So, it's where you learn all of these like intangible life skills, and you kind of learn them for free.
Yeah, and I think you know, many communities, and I think maybe we've lost a little bit of it, but over time, a lot of our communities have been built around community clubs and associations. And I think, you know, when you join a club, it's about the sport, but then it's about the people, isn't it? And you sort of realise the sport sometimes is a bit of a glue and an excuse to get people together, and they become your mates or your friends, or, you know, people you'll go and do other things with. I got lucky and met my wife through rowing. A lot of my good mates, I met, you know, great mates like yourself through the through football. And it's all these chance encounters with people, and an opportunity to get to know each other, and sometimes to work on projects or chase a goal, and you know, you really find the strengths of other people, don't you, when you work on those things?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like elements of serendipity, I think, and then because you go into it never knowing where it's going to lead, it leads somewhere. And it's like, and then because you're zigging and zagging as the people you meet, and then the others they introduce you to, or the experiences you go to, whether positive or negative, you know, you have to react to it. So,
I mean, specifically for us, we for our Sims ended up working on a couple of projects, didn't we? One was the redevelopment of our local oval club rooms down at City Beach Oval, and
still got the scars.
I think we've all got some, and I know if I've got any, yours would be a sort of 10x factor of mine. But you know, coming back to the start, I think what struck me about you, and as a young man, was your integrity and your capacity to get things done. And you know, even, I guess, what are we talking, 2012, 11, so sort of more than 10 years ago. But
it's incredible to think how long ago it is.
Yeah, I mean, sort of on the face of it, you think, oh, no big deal, you're redeveloping some local community club rooms, but there was complexity, wasn't there? I you know, had a few years working under my belt, and I've worked on a range of different projects and activities, and some of those were hard, but gee, there was some head-scratching meetings and discussions we had, didn't we? Just because of the range of stakeholders and people involved, and trying to juggle money in times where certain stakeholders didn't have any. Wasn't a walk in the park, was it?
No, I mean, I still, and I don't want to start on a negative with the story, still look back and, you know, have, I guess, regrets about, you know, if only in hindsight we'd done X, Y, or Z, but again, like, amazing learning experience to navigate over what was probably like 5 or more years of ins and outs and different versions and different stakeholders coming into the table and different deals getting spun up. And it is kind of doing deals and all these little concepts, and everyone's got an idea, but obviously you're trying to deal with council, with budget cycles, with state government funding requirements, with various stakeholders of different, like you said, financial levels or needs or wants. And I think what we were lucky and fortunate, and probably made our own good fortune, I think when the rubber finally hit the road, because we had continuity of those relationships for a few years.
True.
Like you can get so far, and then someone will leave. You know, the person at the council will go to a different role, or one of the club presidents moves on, or whatever. But we all had probably a 3-year window, I reckon, where we had that continuity, and before you know it, everyone kind of can muck in, and
Yeah.
all the engines point in the same direction and off you go.
And we knew sort of, the senior footy club were all pulling the same way. We certainly were from the junior side. We knew the cricketers were, doing what they could to put their shoulder to the wheel. But I guess, notwithstanding the scars and bruises, we ended up with a new facility, or a kind of new facility.
Yep.
And, some beautiful playing lights down there, which, again, you see some of the sporting clubs now that want other lights or redevelopment, and none of it's easy, is it?
No.
You'll get local community groups objecting. They don't like the light, or they don't like the nighttime activity.
Yeah. I reckon we were lucky, and I reckon if that project was done differently, it would have cost everyone $100,000 or more more.
Yeah.
But we managed, I think maybe because we had a bit of runs on the board with the club room and momentum, and we were all again pulling in the same direction, but we managed to get that one up pretty quickly. Incredibly timely, because even now I know that at that club, for example, both clubs, senior and junior, they clubbed together this year. I think, I don't know if they got approved, but they want to do a second round of lights into the top oval as well, because they were already at capacity with the bottom oval. Yeah. So imagine if we hadn't managed to get that off the ground.
Yeah, that's right. I think now with female football, and in the case down there, girls playing on Friday nights, it's all the grounds are in high demand, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely, flat out, and across all grounds. And that's sort of what I see a lot in where I've gone sort of post West Coast Amateurs, but president of the Perth Football League now, and that facilities is one of the biggest themes we talk about.
Yeah, sure.
Along with umpiring, which I know is close to your heart as well. But yeah, the growth of female footy has completely changed the game. Obviously, cricket to a degree as well, I think, with sort of ballooning numbers there in female participation. But we used to think we had maybe enough ovals as an industry or as a community, and all of a sudden you add 40% more players to it. Training times, game times. A lot of our clubs are running games essentially from, they used to run 3 in a day, now they're running 5 or even 6 sets of games in a day.
Yeah.
So you're flat out from 8:30 in the morning till 8:30 at night. So yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
Big demand. And on the back to your days at West Coast Cowan, or West Coast Amateur Football Club, it struck me at the time that as a amateur football club, really just for young men in those days, that you and your friends or colleagues, I guess, that were running the club, even though you're kind of relatively quite young, it seemed to me that you were positioning that club for the future, in the sense that you're ahead of the time, really, weren't you, in, dare I say, sort of cleaning up a lot of the vestiges of perhaps some of the old school parts of amateur footy. Because I think normally a junior club and a men's amateur football club, well, yeah, sure, they both play football and they probably want the best for each other, but they're probably going to be unlikely bedfellows, aren't they? Whereas we found you guys were great neighbours, and much more than sort of neighbours. You were big brothers in a lot of way, and put a lot back into the junior club. And it was, the club was sort of very user friendly and female friendly before really there was female football. So I imagine you would have been, very well placed when you decided to, or perhaps a little after your time, but the boys that followed when they went down the path of having a female football team. Yeah,
I reckon it definitely was sort of implied foundations, if you like. I think to maybe try to link that with the earlier discussion, like you don't necessarily know it at the time, but one of the great things about volunteering on a community club, if you've got the time and the right people, is it's essentially like strategic planning for a business. Like if you do it wrong, and I shouldn't say wrong because we all do it, but the temptation at a sporting club or volunteering anywhere is, do all the doing. And then you think about that kind of business saying of, am I working on the business or in the business? And I think and it started a bit before my time, but had a bit more strategic level discussions around who we wanted to be. And we're probably also a little bit lucky that little catchment there is really quite densely serviced. You've got huge, big university clubs down the road. You've got really big historical clubs just up the street. You've got 3 or 4 in the little quadrant that's from where we were at City Beach down to the river and in. And then you've got some big powerhouses just to your north. So we had to sit there and say, how are we going to be different? And we ended up, and again, it wasn't super strategic, but landing on, well, there's a bit of a different vibe around here. We want to be a family club. So that was sort of, I think, through Raka, who you know, and Isaac Jury, who was my predecessor. And that then led to a few things about, what behaviours do you want to shoot for, what environments do you want to create, how do you want to go about doing things. We created really like a volunteer culture where it was just expected. It was your club, but that meant taking some pride in it and some ownership. And if you wouldn't sort of stand for it at your own house, then why would you do it at your club? So, you clean up after yourself, you do a few of those things. And I do think that probably set a bit of the foundation that then when female footy came along after my time, the club was ready to go and had all of the, the cultural piece already in place. And in their first couple of years they were the second club to get to two women's teams. Wow. Made the grand final in the first year. Probably should have won it. But they've then sort of stayed in that A grade level ever since. So,
right.
I reckon a bit of that comes through.
Oh, well, very lucky. As you mentioned, there were some great people down there. You had some good guys on the senior footy club, and we had a good committee with people like Murray and
still see Murray every now and again. Coffee shop.
All some very good people. How did you get involved in the Perth Football League, or I think back then, did we just call it the WA Amateurs?
Yeah, it was called. I was elected to the board. So I'd been at the club, that footy club, for I think probably a decade or so, president. And there was a few of myself and other presidents who were sort of in discussions generally. Actually started from a bit of a workshop the league was running, trying to get feedback from clubs around some elements of the comp. And a few of us came together and said, well, we feel like there needs to be a bit more change than we're shooting for here. And ended up essentially saying, well, I'll have a crack at the board. So I went in from off the board and ran for president and was elected. So I went straight in from the outside to being the president of what was then called the WA Amateur Football League. Not flying blind, but kind of like learning a lot as I went, really. I'd been a president of a local footy club, but this is another level up, big body sort of thing. I'm now just finished the 7th season of that, which is certainly more than I ever contemplated, but I've quite enjoyed it. But we rebranded a couple of years into the Perth Football League for a few reasons around just repositioning and so on. And in hindsight, I think there was a few other timely elements with that, with women's football growing and so on. 7 years into what will end up being a 9-year term for that.
Amazing. And what was your main beef with amateur football? Was it, I know there were some concerns about some of the fighting and violence.
At the time it was the sort of catalyst for the discussions was around the single word was kind of integrity, which you used earlier. It was just kind of what do we stand for, and I think there was probably a groundswell of newer, younger presidents coming through who maybe saw things a bit differently. As much as I probably would have loved to still be at my club, because that's where your connections are, stepped into the role, and then once I got into it, I guess started learning more and more, and I like the scale of it now, because you can have great impact at your club amongst the 150 or 250 people you get to kind of work and develop a culture with. But the league itself is huge. We've got 71 member clubs. You spread from Yanchep to Mandurah to Ellenbrook to Armidale.
Amazing.
317 teams it was this year. So all of a sudden it starts opening your eyes about how big the sport is. And this maybe comes back to the conversation earlier as well, because again, for me, it was never about the footy per se. That was sort of the vehicle or the distraction to get the community impact and the culture, the social connection, the mental health, the physical health, all the other stuff. Through the role, I guess I get to see a bit more of that, or a lot more of that bigger picture now. We've been through a couple of rounds of strategic evolution with rebranding, women's footy, changing our positioning, big focus on changing the commercial model of the league, which is now just starting again the gears to really crank up, which is good fun.
Yeah,
So
right.
it's a again, another great learning experience. I really find it quite. It's where I sort of do probably my professional development, if you like.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Working with some good people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you ride a lot of bumps along the way. You do special projects which you grind through, and they turn out to be, you know, you either get it right or not. But when you get it right, it's really it's impactful. So.
And working closely with the Football Commission, are they good support for the Perth Football League? Yeah,
so we're an affiliate of the Footy Commission. I think have a very constructive relationship. Our staff are based out of their office.
Okay.
We make up 70 or 80% of their participation story.
Yeah, right.
I mean, podcast for another day maybe, but they've had their own sort of challenges and I mean, situations where I think we've kind of worked together well, but also we're passionate, you know, pretty proud advocates too. You know, we'll make the case, we'll always support. But that's been a really interesting experience too, because you're talking then, you know, government advocacy, big picture, whole of industry, and really big potential reforms if people can pull them off together.
It is a very, very large, complex industry, isn't it?
And emotional industry as well.
Sure. I've seen that. Well, I'm sure you've seen plenty behind the scenes too.
A little bit.
There's what goes on the field, isn't there, and on the edges of the field.
Yeah.
I often think what happens on the edges of the field is probably spicier than on the field, and that's similar.
Passion can achieve great things, and also can
distract
a lot too. Cloud a lot of thinking, exactly.
Yeah. Do you feel like the actual game itself and the way the game day format works for the amateurs is in good shape?
Yeah, I think we can explore change. My sense is clubs are willing to think differently, and again, I think it's been one of those like positive second effects or knock-on effects of like women's footy. No one would have imagined 10 years ago, you know, what was happening now and how different a Saturday would look or a week to week would look. I've got some ideas that I don't want to colour anyone's thinking with, but I think, once you just think about what's the purpose of this, what am I trying to achieve, and who are the different audiences we cater to, you can start imagining it looks pretty different. There's little things like AFL 9s that, you know, the industry's tried and we had down at City Beach, you know, midweek under lights, maybe bringing, you know, parents together or different teams to do something a bit different, making footy accessible to more people. That's something. But everything from kind of, you know, rules and lengths of games and frequency of games, like over time we have to kind of put everything on the table, at least to decide if it still should stay on the table. But even like there'll be curveballs thrown at us. I mean, COVID threw a curveball, and what we learned out of that was when people didn't get it, they really missed it. And all of a sudden, this 9-week season that we were able to get up in the first year was brilliant, because everyone was like, how good is this? You know, I can still, you know, less injuries, we're all working, we had a great time, and it's run and done.
Probably an opportunity to learn, you know, through necessity what can work.
Yeah, exactly. And I could imagine in the future, and some of it might come out of necessity or innovation, if you like, but does a footy season need to be that we all play each other twice? Like we always thought. You know, maybe there are different ways of doing things.
And every sport's going through the same issues and challenges, aren't they? Working out what's the right format and you know, all sorts of different drivers. Commercial or at a participation level.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it all comes back to kind of what's the purpose, who are we serving here, and in what, you know, in what capacity, what itch do they need scratched.
After that sort of first shortened season, did you find the numbers came back strongly, or has it taken a little bit of rebuild?
We had, I think, a very good decision that we made, which helped numbers. So our numbers actually held steady during COVID. Like literally didn't drop a team.
It's amazing.
But the reason was we raided the rainy day fund essentially. So the league said we'll make it nominal entry fee to put a team in this year. So all of a sudden participation held steady. And then the next year bounced straight back. Whereas I know the rest of the industries, I think, still maybe a tiny bit behind in terms of numbers from there. Whereas we're up net, I think it's sort of 15 or 17% since. So it absolutely links to the growth of women's and other things, but I think a little bit was we've maintained continuity. I know certainly that was a huge challenge in country footy, where half of the leagues were not able to get a season up and the other half did.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't have full visibility on the data, but I think you'd find that the ones that lost that continuity,
Yeah.
you know, you lose the volunteer or
Right.
the one or two volunteers or the couple of players who decide, you know, they won't, you know, the coach had to call at the start of last year to say, go around one more year, mate, you know, we need you. And then, okay, I've got some money there, I'm probably done now.
break their string.
Yeah.
So, I've got a couple of young umpires that I know well coming through the ranks, junior footy and amateur footy. How have you seen the umpiring over the last few years?
Umpiring is of the probably kind of three biggest challenges I reckon that are in the industry, and this is as a whole, probably nationwide. You've got supporting volunteers and some structural trends there and challenges. You've got facilities, you know, particularly with the growth of women's footy, but that's grounds, lights, club rooms, and change rooms particularly, and you've got umpiring. And I reckon they're the three biggest challenges. And yeah, when I think about that, we've had a bit of a probably kind of nice strategic rethink, or at least challenged status quo a little bit around, you know, it was easy to always tell the growth story. You do it in business, you do it, you know, it's what we see on the news with economies and everything else. Everyone wants to see up by X%.
Points up and to the right.
Yeah, exactly. And all of a sudden sort of reframe the conversation around sustainable growth, because growth can't keep going up, you know, essentially exponentially when you've got natural constraints around facilities, for example. You can only have so many games on so many ovals, so many days of the week. So there's an upper bound. Volunteers, well, they can only put in so much time, so there's a constraint. But then probably the biggest, most acute one, I reckon, could be umpiring, because you need, you know, ideally at least 2 fieldies, a couple of boundaries, and a couple of goal umpires per game. It's an incredible you know, ratio of people you need to get a footy game up.
It's a highly officiated game, isn't it?
Yeah, really officiated. So all of a sudden, if you've got that constraint, you can only mathematically get as many games is, you know, number of umpires times by number of games they're able to umpire each weekend. You know, divided by 2, that's the maximum number of games. So, if you want to keep kind of the up and to the right story going, or giving people a chance to participate, you need to make sure the umpires are there.
You've got to bring them in and keep them in, don't you? For a long period of time. Yeah,
and it's exactly like a business challenge. You think about, you know, you've got customers, you need to acquire umpires, get them interested in the first place. So how does someone find out it's a pathway that might appeal to them? How do you kind of help them convert, get them into the 10, give them, you know, their first go, and then retain them and, you know, keep them in the system. I think, some of the stuff I've learned from probably almost my first year. So there's a independent club, Perth Football League, what they were then called the WA Amateur Football League Umpires Association, and you start understanding from them, you know, why. And it was the same, they were a club. So, okay, this is interesting. These are people who have a common interest around footy, but particularly the element of umpiring. So, okay, let's try find out what gives them that sense of attachment and purpose. And then you've got these kind of the whole of industry structural challenges when the AFL even sort of says, we've got umpiring issues, as they did. I think they said a shortfall, and I'll get the number wrong, but I feel like it was sort of 9,000 umpires short. You know, nationally of 6,000 perhaps it was. That was 2021. And I think as a rule of thumb, if they're coming out saying there's an issue, then there's a real issue. They're pretty good at sort of managing the media and other things, but that one, that was kind of a red flag to me. And again, as games keep going up.
And I understand with the new TV rights deal, there's perhaps some more money going to fall the way of umpire development and, you know, support and fostering their training and on and off the field.
Definitely. I think they've now got resources in each of the states that they're funding through that. I think the other fascinating thing, as much as we all might have liked to whinge about it when we're watching the footy, I actually reckon it's great that they had, you know, some of the new rules around umpire abuse and things, because again, you've got to do the hard work to get people interested. Why would anyone put their hand up to try this thing when they go to, Subiaco Oval previously or now the stadium and hear people calling them yellow maggots? that's not for me.
Yeah.
So we need to change like a whole society perspective of umpiring.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned rugby union earlier, having played that. Like compare the experience of how a rugby union, referee is treated, and how they communicate to players and vice versa with what we see in a footy game, or we'll see in the FIFA World Cup tomorrow night. Players getting an umpire's face.
Rugby, I don't know the origin, but yes sir, no sir,
it's pretty good.
And that's start and finish of it. You say there's big hulking forwards, bowing before the referee, don't you? And
you've got 150
it's obviously just
kilogram.
ingrained in the sport from an early stage. The ref's the boss, and be nice if we could take some of that spirit into Aussie rules, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, and you see it in junior footy where they've evolved to have what they call E-points now, which is essentially, they're saying the environment of the game, the off-field now, rates on par with what happens on field. So your team might win, but if you carry on like peanuts off field, you're going to walk away with as many points as the team that lost but carried on properly.
Yes.
So, philosophically, that's really interesting if Perth Footy League explored that and mapped that to senior, to men and women, because particularly some of our, the male side of the competition that's done things the same way for 100 years, they might sit there and say, we're adults, you don't need to, put a nappy around us. But maybe if it's community footy and it's about, good people coming together, maybe we can explore that.
Sure. As a young Sam Birmingham, what did you enjoy at school?
Playing sport.
We had plenty of opportunity, didn't we? Well, you boys a bit.
Exactly.
I'm a little bit older than you, but
not too much. But that was definitely the thing that gave the week structure. I went well at school, and I think I probably look back and I reckon I left a fair bit on the table. Got through. Didn't work too hard. Had made friends. We had obviously both went to the same school and had every opportunity and terrific teachers and support and resources and buildings and all that as well. But the sport was probably the thing that gave it structure each week. And you look back and you go, I still reflect now, like it's hard. I've got a couple of young kids and we're not at the stage of ferrying them around for sporting and ballet and everything yet. But I don't know how my mum particularly got us from school to local to district to state rep to pick up the other sibling and cook dinner and do the other and
I could say as a parent, in this case it was my wife driving my youngest son to swimming training this morning. Probably left home at 5:30 to be at the pool at 6. And
what day is it today again? Saturday.
Saturday, bit of an unusual one, but we are lucky living close to school, so sometimes the boys at least can or have done over the past ride their bikes up to training or something like that. Or it's not too far to go anyway. But it's if your kids are playing sport like we did, as you say, you wonder how your parents did it, and then you find yourself doing it. But it's very, very rewarding, I guess, as a parent to see your kids, if they're happy to get out of bed and get stuck into training or whatever it is they want to do. It's there's something about it, even though you're not participating, you enjoy vicariously, I guess, what they're up to.
Well, and it gives you a chance to reflect on your own glories. No, I think you're right. And I didn't realise at the time. People say it, you don't necessarily notice it, but it does teach you how to work together in team environments. It does teach you the importance of kind of routine and committing and reflecting when you got out, you did something wrong. What are you going to do next time? They're actually tiny little life lessons. And again, sport just kind of tricks us, but because it's fun and it's accessible, and we can do it with our friends, we can then do it for our whole life. I reckon it's one of the bits of community that kind of keeps us all, glues us all together.
I agree, and back to our footy, you see, and I'm sure you've seen it in amateur football, and I've seen it in junior football. You see a kid that may not be fitting in at school, or may have issues in the classroom, but they come down and put their club jumper on, or sing the song after a game, and it's just a beautiful thing.
Yep.
It doesn't matter how you've played, you've been a part of it and hopefully done your best, and there's a lot of character development out of that, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that was always the thing that I enjoyed the most. It's not seeing the good player kick the goal, it's seeing the quiet player come out of his shell.
Yeah.
It's seeing the one who used to carry on a bit,
Yeah.
fall into line or
Yeah.
start role modelling the right behaviours. It's seeing the ones that didn't really kind of know what they were doing, step up onto committees or help out, or that was always the thing you get the glow out of. I said to someone earlier this week, my favourite moment was always, when someone would say, "Oh, would you be my referee?"
Yeah.
And then you'd get the phone call from, where they were going for a job.
Yeah.
Like little things like
Yeah.
that where, that was the
Very
thing that you get
satisfying,
the kick
isn't it?
out of.
Yeah.
So.
Off to uni from school for you?
Yep, yeah. So I graduated 98, went straight to uni, didn't know what I wanted to do, still don't. I just fell in on marks to do law.
Yeah.
And so I did it. I absolutely had no idea what I wanted to do. But the thinking was, well, I'm going to uni, I'm not going to take a gap year or anything. I've got the marks, I'll do it, suck it and see. Uni was good at making friends.
Yeah.
Didn't work hard at all. Again, I left a lot of the academic side of it on the table, but did enough to get by. But look back again on like some pivotal moments where I still probably one of my favourite days of life, I reckon, was like the first day at uni on Oak Lawn, where the circle, you had your group of mates at school, and then all of a sudden, and there was one guy who sort of connected us all, who was the head boy of school, so he probably had relationships with the heads of 3 or 4 other schools, but all of a sudden there was ourselves, some mates from JTC, some Scotchies, some of the girls' schools, and all of a sudden your little pod of 5, 10, 15 people becomes 50.
Yeah.
And again, some of those are my best mates now.
Yeah.
One of them was the one who, to kind of trace it all back, made the call to get me down to the footy club in the first place.
Yeah.
One of them was the first person I, employed in a business. They're the people I've been messaging all day when we're talking about the cricket or whatever else.
Yeah.
But sort of fell into uni. I think I had a little bit of a pause or part-time in the second year, third year, fourth year, before you know it. Oh, I'm almost there, I might as well kind of finish now.
Yeah.
But I still hadn't really found what I wanted to do.
Did you think you might be a lawyer?
It was one thing I knew I didn't want to do.
Okay.
And that was, at the time, it felt weird because all my mates were going to do clerking and then articles, and some are still, practicing or partners or whatever. My old man was a lawyer and then a judge after that, and I knew I didn't want to go down that path, but I stuck with it, got it done in the end. I probably only finally at the very end started enjoying, it's the wrong word, but getting a bit more, sinking my teeth into it, and that was once you started doing electives and there were things that were a bit more maybe creative. Ended up doing that 5-year degree or double degree in 6 years. Did a bunch of working, running my own little projects and stuff along the way, made lots of friends. It was kind of funny because I still didn't know what I wanted to do, where I was going to end up.
But perhaps back then you couldn't articulate it, but did you sort of have a sense that the fact you didn't know what you wanted to do, maybe it was to go and find a little project or germinate the seed of an idea into a business or something along the sort of startup line or entrepreneurial line?
Yeah, I reckon it was absolutely linked to that, and it probably sort of goes full circle because, again, it wasn't deliberate at the time, but then sort of 3 years out of uni, I ended up setting up my own little business, and ultimately the purpose of it, I was creating a young network for young professionals. I beg pardon, network for young professionals. So early days of sort of social media, and I'd seen what I liked about Facebook and LinkedIn and wanted to take what I thought was the best of both and combine it. But at the end of the day, it was essentially, as a young person, and you go through this huge big life stage from, I've gone through a structured education program, primary to secondary. I go into life after that. For some people, that's into the workforce, apprenticeship, TAFE, university, whatever it might be. But there's this kind of independence cliff you jump off, and no one knows really where they're going. And so, yeah, again, it wasn't by design, but when I reflect on it, I think what I was doing was kind of my own journey there, saying, well, I don't know where I'm going, but I always found the people I learned the most from for the ones who were a couple of years in front of me. Yes, your parents would always provide support or questions or guidance, you know, and their friends or your old teachers or whatever, but it was always the ones who were just a couple of steps in front that I thought were the best to kind of learn from. So yeah, that was the premise of setting up that business, and it was everything from, yeah, how do I choose what to do at uni or study, to write a resume, because I've never really had to do that off my back before. Or the other ones that I was really big on, my sort of passion for it was more around the financial side of things. I was always interested in, you know, money and investment and all that sort of stuff. I was one of the first to buy a house amongst my group of friends. But again, you're sort of flying blind. And I say this with the greatest respect, but like when you go to your parents for the feedback on that situation, they grew up in a very different time. So this was early 2000s. And people still will talk now about, you know, interest rates were 17% back in my day, but houses were 150 grand.
Yes.
And I remember sort of the analogy of the first house I bought was a 64 square metre unit in Wembley, and it cost essentially the same as my parents', you know, 1,012 square metre block in Floreat. So it's hard to get advice as much as they would help. It was this very different journey with the way the world had gone. So I was keen. The big vision was to essentially create a financial services business or platform for young professionals. So it was kind of fascinating. Made a lot of mistakes along the way, learned a lot. Had a few good stories.
And out of all that, you had or discovered a passion for teaching?
Yep. Yeah. So again, the zigs and the zags that you never really know exactly where you're going. I did that business for a while. At the end of it, sort of, well, realised, you know, I've taken as far as I'm going to get it. I'm knackered. I need to fix myself. And then upon reflecting, realised that, okay, I've got a bunch of lessons that I can share. So I started really just kind of sharing those lessons through, I actually set up a meetup group just off, you know, well, I feel like this was a very lonely journey as a young entrepreneur. Maybe there's some others out there like me. I'll just try and spin something up. So you give it a go. And ended up building this little network of, like-minded young people. We'd get one business person to come down and speak. And I would just, because I was comfortable kind of being rejected, I'd just write the email and ask the question and find that all of a sudden you get these great people coming down all the way to like Michael Malone. So, you know, like one of the more decorated entrepreneurs at the time. He came down and spoke at our last one, ended up buying everyone drinks and dinner and the whole lot. But yeah, that then led me into this startup land. And then I sort of eventually realised I had this, pivotal moment's kind of the wrong phrase, but I had this sort of moment of clarity where I'd been holding on to all of the losses that I'd incurred, you know, financial, relationship, time, and I was essentially looking at them as sunk cost. And then I realised, and sorry to use boring accounting kind of phrases, but I sort of said, actually, there's an asset there. And I was able to then look forward and realise I've actually got all these stories and learnings, and I quite like telling a story, or I didn't think of myself as a coach or a mentor or an advisor per se, but my description was, I'll kind of pick off my scars and you can see the blood, and you know, you can learn your own lessons. So I did a bit of informal kind of mentoring and things in startup land, and then I realised, no, I want to get into education again, back to kind of young people. Always been one of the key themes. You know, maybe that's where I can have my impact. So I started doing a dip ed, but again found, you know, loved one unit, hated another, felt structurally the system wasn't for me, but then out of the blue got asked to run a unit at UWA.
Awesome.
So it was just kind of one of those things where the dots make sense when you look back. But at the time there was no strategy to get to it. But the people I'd met, the doors I'd opened, the walls I'd crashed through, they were looking to set up a unit about startups and innovation and stuff. So did that at UWA. I've got into education without having to go through the formal kind of paths. Zigged and zagged to do. I did a course at Murdoch as well. Did some other programs through ECU and other things. It's still, when I'm, as we were sort of saying off mic before, reflecting on career, it's still probably that's the big theme or one of the couple of big themes that's still probably, a light that I'm kind of pulling towards.
Yeah.
But I don't know exactly what that looks like at the moment.
Yeah. And what are you doing today? You're doing some work still with startups and some institutional groups?
Little bits and pieces. I do the board stuff with Perth Footy League to, still got that community kind of part of my values. Work-wise, I work at the RAC.
Yeah.
Bit of a joke, but essentially I say that it was a part-time 6-month contract, and 4.5 years later I'm still there full-time. It's coincided with a period of having a couple of kids, so turned up to the interview, got the job. At the time, being candid, I was really just looking for a bit of stability of income. You're doing consulting, catching what you kill, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And okay, we've got kids coming on, a little bit of structure, bankable income, and then keep doing the stuff on the side for the cream.
Yeah.
But quite liked the people, the environment, the big wooden ship, as I like to call it, that, as you know, when you've got young kids, sometimes you really need.
Yeah.
We had, the first one wasn't much of a sleeper, so we had, thanks for that. Just being able to have this place that was really supportive was huge for me. Toggled up and down, 3 days, 2 days, 4 days, depending on what we needed, mainly on the home front.
Yeah.
But before you know it, 4 and a bit years have gone by, and I've sort of evolved the role a couple of times, but it's still back to that core, the innovation type stuff, challenging the status quo, and again it maps to some of the things that I look back and see, their little Sam traits.
Yes.
Not just me, but I'm comfortable challenging the status quo. Some people don't like doing that in big organisations, but I'm comfortable doing it, so that's fine.
And does that tend to be with internal teams?
Yeah, so and this is kind of where it's worked well. So nowadays I work in an internal team there called the CoLab. So through a couple of projects I helped on, we ended up through my manager's leadership and the company evolving to being a member-centred organisation, running this little thing called the CoLab, where we engage with members, external partners, and also internal business units to pick up some of those ideas that might be, sit on the business on the business plan or the backlog for a while, but get out and actually test those. Generally working with business units internally, and in a nice connecting all these dots together way. The project I'm focused on at the moment is around volunteering.
Yeah, right.
So at RAC, we've sat there and said, we've got 1.2 million members. How might we engage and empower those people to help us ultimately deliver on, our sort of broader vision for a safer, sustainable, more connected WA. So when I heard that project was coming up, I sort of said, I wouldn't mind having a crack at that one.
Fantastic.
I get to have conversations with members about their experiences, where volunteering's helped them, or they've been involved in it with partner organisations. So it's definitely given me a bit of a lease of life on all that at the moment.
Right.
Bring the worlds together.
The few people better qualified for that sort of role.
I've met some pretty good people. I'm not going to lie to you. So there's some people out there doing amazing stuff, as you know. You sort of sometimes, to be honest, feel a bit guilty when you leave those meetings where we're in discovery mode. We're trying to find out, who's doing what challenges they're facing, and little opportunities. And you sit there and think, far out. There's some outstanding people doing stuff with
unheralded.
Yeah, just and it's the tens of thousands of dollars. Their entire operating budget for a year, and they're having all of this impact on things.
Make it go a long way.
Yeah, you sort of sit there wishing that, and they don't let me spend the money, which is a very good decision, but you sit there thinking, like, as a society, like, where are our resources going? Because there's people that do amazing stuff with very little. How do we help them do a bit more of that?
Have you ever thought about a political career?
Still don't know if I'd get there. Again, as we were saying off mic earlier, I've sort of recently, I've never been good at planning my career. That can be a bit of a good thing, but every now and again I think you have to sort of stop, look back, look forward.
Well, a bit of it's what do you want to do with your life, isn't it? Those sort of questions.
Like a little bit sort of philosophical, and I did that earlier this year, and that's sort of one of the themes I still am interested in. I don't know exactly what it looks like. I'll probably evolve my thinking a little bit to, if that's one of the, I think about them as train tracks, like if that's one of the train tracks, maybe it's not being the politician per se, but policy is really interesting. also really like advocacy.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something in there. I don't know.
Mm.
I was like fascinated to watch the federal election stuff, the rise of the independents there. And yeah, I wish I had kind of more time. I'd love to sit down. I've got some mates that I talk this stuff with. I'd love to sit down over a few beers one night and just really try to explore where we think, you know, that side of the world's going in institutions and societies and things. So that fascinates me still. But yeah, not sure if or when.
Yeah, I'll look forward to watching, because I think, as I said at the start, you know, I was lucky to meet you through community football, and I probably never really got the chance to thank you for everything you did down at City Beach Oval, and all the support you gave to the junior football club and people like Martin and Murray and myself. You know, certainly without your involvement, nothing would have happened down there from a capital works project. I think you were the glue and the driver for the whole thing, and we were all just swinging along trying to help to the best extent we could. But I've always enjoyed keeping in touch with you, and I think you've done a lot of amazing things so far, and I sort of feel like you're you know, triple century and salute to the grandstand still out there, and like you say, that who knows what shape that is, but you know, I've got to know you, and I think you've got all the skills and drive and capability and people skills. You're already making a great impact in the community, and with all the things you've described, and you know, I'm sure there's a lot more to come.
Yeah, we'll see. You've triggered me slightly talking about a triple century. I'm still never managed to raise the bat officially in cricket, so 78 not out. You've really got me going. But oh, if only.
Yeah,
they got into my head. Yeah, I think like a word you used in there that I love. It's one of my sort of values when I reflect on things is impact. And yeah, again, reflecting back on club rooms and stuff, there's so many things I would have done differently had I done that now. Like, I think one of my strengths, but absolutely the flip side, is I can be a blunt instrument. And sometimes the blunt instrument, you know, eventually crashes through the wall. And I reckon I was a little bit of that back then. So I've sort of tried to reflect and recognise when that's a strength, but also when you need to dial it back. But yeah, impact's a key value to me. Like, we're not here a long time. And nothing, I guess, frustrates me more than, seeing something that could be good or, you know, should be done, not get done. So yeah, still a work in progress as to how best to have impact and know where each of us want to, you know, crack through. But yeah, and I'm glad you used that word. It's one I think about a lot.
Just finally, do you feel like as a father to two young girls, has that changed your perspective on you know, all the things you're involved in and how you look forward?
Yes. I'm still finding my feet. So 4.5 years in, I've learned a lot. Definitely things I do differently. I think like maybe a little bit of timeliness here. I went bush with a mate on last weekend just briefly, and we like to have philosophical kind of conversations, and I already had a theme in mind with him, and the question I asked as we were sort of driving to where we were going was, how do you define success? And some people think about it in a professional sense or in a project sense or in whatever, and I was thinking about it in kind of more of a life reflection, because I think it is like and where we ended up with our answers was, at the end of the day, it's really kind of the relationships that you invest in, how, you know, you're perceived by the people that you care about. And that's the thing that I'd do anything for the girls. Like, you know, that's really kind of all I care about is the people they become. And that they
sort of ultimate legacy,
rate and respect me. I guess it's don't want to get too serious on a Saturday afternoon, but it's pretty eye-opening. You learn what the human body can do, you know, like sleep and all that sort of stuff. Never take that for granted again. We haven't gone through the teenage years and that sort of stuff yet, but apparently that's quite fun. But they're terrific.
Good. Okay, well, you've probably got some kids' parties to attend to, Christmas shopping to do,
Weeds to pull out of the garden,
Weeds.
lawn to mow.
and you can put all that off with just sitting back watching the cricket. You know, if you're clever, how you play your cards.
What's the score? Who knows?
Yeah, well, I think that Gabba pitch is doing a little bit of damage.
Yes.
So, yeah, be an interesting test match. Well, thanks, Sam.
Great to chat.
I reckon we might have to do something again down the track in some form or other. But you know, I'm really thrilled you could come out this afternoon, and it's been great talking to you.
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed the chat, and good on you for getting it off the ground. It's
Oh,
good.
good on you. Thanks, Sam.
Legend.
Okay. Great, man.
So easy.
Thanks, Sam.
It's good fun, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's sort of easy